On the way back, Yumiko remembers how kind Kesuke is. She can't believe he could ever be involved in a scandal, so she silently vows to prove his innocence. When she returns to the office, chaos fills the department. Her teammates are all on the phone, pleading with someone on the other end. When she asks what's going on, they explain that the Ramune-flavored chips might not happen at all because the potato farm they usually source from was hit by a typhoon. They add that the sales team is doing what they can, but with their regular chips already in trouble, launching a new product will not be a priority. Hiroki suddenly announces that he'll head to Hokkaido. Yumiko immediately insists on joining him, saying that since the Ramune-flavored chips were her pitch, it's only right that she makes sure everything's okay. She even adds that they can rely on her brains and beauty to solve the problem. Hiroki tells her to get ready within a minute, which makes Yumiko grin, proud that she got her way. As she hurries to prepare, Saki warns her to be careful, hinting that she might have to stay overnight. Yumiko's imagination runs wild as she suddenly worries that Hiroki, being separated, might have urges he can't control and that she could become a victim. Saki realizes it's pointless to explain further and simply wishes her good luck. As they head out, they run into Kesuke, who notices their bags. He asks Hiroki to let him come along, but Hiroki walks right past him without a word. Yumiko quickly takes Kesuke's hands and reassures him not to worry. She promises that they'll handle the problem and cheerfully tells him to expect souvenirs. When they arrive, Yumiko is amazed by the vast fields of potato plants stretching before her. But the moment a farmer spots them, he firmly declares that they're not getting any of his potatoes. Hiroki tries to reason with him, but the farmer stands by his decision, saying he doesn't want his potatoes turned into junk food. He starts to explain more reasons why he doesn't want his potatoes used, but then notices Yumiko beside Hiroki. He asks if she is Yoshiko. Yumiko corrects him, introducing herself as Yumiko, though Hiroki cuts her off before she can say more. Just then, Yumiko catches the scent of something delicious. The farmer gestures towards some freshly steamed potatoes, saying they've just finished cooking. He picks one up fondly, mentioning that steamed potatoes were Yoshiko's favorite. Yumiko's stomach growls loudly since she hasn't eaten lunch yet, so the farmer offers her one. She takes a small bite and immediately exclaims how delicious it is. Noticing a batch of freshly harvested potatoes nearby, she walks over to inspect them. She picks one up, intrigued by its odd shape. The farmer frowns, muttering that people like them are usually picky about imperfect potatoes. But Yumiko doesn't hear him. She's too busy admiring the variety. She cheerfully says that their different shapes and sizes would be perfect for her unique potato chip idea. Hiroki backs her up and asks the farmer again to let them use his potatoes. After a moment of thought, the farmer finally agrees. Both Yumiko and Hiroki smile in relief. Curious, Yumiko asks who Yoshiko is, only to be disappointed when the farmer explains that Yoshiko is his beloved wild boar. They rush to catch the train to the airport. Hiroki looks irritated when he sees the number of bags Yumiko is carrying. She explains that most of the things are for her, not the team, since she needs to maintain her beautiful body. Despite his annoyance, Hiroki helps her carry the bags and they board the train together. As Yumiko happily eats beside him, Hiroki reminds her not to celebrate yet since there's still more work ahead. Still, he thanks her, admitting that the farmer probably wouldn't have agreed if Yumiko hadn't showered him with compliments. Yumiko proudly says it's thanks to her beauty, though she adds that it wasn't difficult to praise him since steamed buttered potatoes are one of her favorite foods. She then asks what Hiroki's favorite food is, realizing too late that it might be too personal a question. To her surprise, he calmly answers that he likes meat and potato stew. Yumiko gets excited that Hiroki is starting to open up to her, so she asks if his wife cooks for him at home. Hiroki admits that cooking isn't his wife's strength and recalls how she cut herself several times the first time she prepared a dish for him. But it was far too salty, yet strangely delicious. When he glances at Yumiko, she has an amused look as she declares that what he experienced with his wife was love. She then asks why he tends to be so stern when he is clearly capable of being kind. Hiroki doesn't answer, prompting Yumiko to playfully demonstrate how he should relax his expression. Her antics only irritate him further, which makes her burst into laughter. Her laughter reminds Hiroki of his wife, and when Yumiko realizes she's laughing at her superior, she quickly apologizes. Hiroki tells her that it's fine. Yumiko looks at him curiously, realizing that he hasn't scared her at all today. When they get off the train, Yumiko tells Hiroki not to be too cold toward Kesuke, mentioning that he seems really down because of Hiroki's attitude. She insists that Kesuke isn't having an affair with Rikako and that Hiroki should believe in his wife because she can tell there's still love between them. She then thanks him for the day and cheerfully heads home. Left alone, Hiroki recalls how Rikako once tried to kill him and wonders if there's truly any love left. The next day, Yumiko waits at the park hoping to see Kesuke. She brought him noodles. Instead, his secretary arrives and hands her a letter. In it, Kesuke congratulates her on the success of the business trip and writes that he'll be too busy to meet her at the park for a while. He includes his email so she can contact him anytime. Yumiko squeals in delight, handing the noodles to the secretary and asking him to deliver them to Kesuke for her. When the secretary leaves, Yumiko excitedly gushes over the fact that she now has Kesuke's email. She considers sending him a message, but quickly stops herself, reminding herself that a lady shouldn't be too forward. Back at the office, she proudly shows off the souvenirs she bought for everyone. Her team praises her for the successful business trip, and she confirms that they secured the potato supply. Yutaka wonders aloud if hitting his own head might make him as positive as her. Saki jokes that his afro would protect him from any impact anyway. Yumiko innocently asks why Yutaka always styles his hair in an afro, and Saki teasingly claims it's because he's secretly bald. Yumiko assures him that it's fine if that's the case, but Yutaka turns red with embarrassment and hurriedly explains that his hair is natural. Flustered, he rushes out of the department. Masakiko watches him go and wonders if Yutaka's reaction has something to do with his crush. The girls immediately grow curious and press him for details. They learn that Yutaka likes a girl named Mocha from the accounting department. They decide to take a peek at her and quickly realize she's very beautiful. However, they're puzzled about what she has to do with Yutaka's hair. Masakiko explains that Mocha is a fan of an actor. He shows them a photo, and they immediately notice he has silky hair and bears a striking resemblance to Kesuke. Masakiko admits that he's seen Yutaka sighing a lot lately and feels bad for him. Yumiko suddenly gets an idea and decides to help. Without hesitation, she approaches Mocha and introduces herself, asking directly what she thinks about big hair. Saki and Masakiko secretly watch from the entrance, while Yutaka spots them and moves closer to see what's happening, only to freeze when he sees Yumiko talking to Mocha. Mocha answers that as long as an afro suits the person, she thinks it's perfectly fine. She adds that she's a big fan of Runo Mares. When Yumiko asks what her type is, Mocha cheerfully replies that she likes the actor Takuma, then lowers her voice to admit she also has a crush on Kesuke. Yumiko is shocked by Mocha's confession, but before she can react, Yutaka suddenly grabs her and drags her away. Back in the planning department, he immediately demands to know why she was talking to Mocha. Saki cuts in, asking what he even likes about her. Masakiko accidentally blurts out that Yutaka likes Mocha's voice. Yumiko's curiosity grows, and after a bit of pressure, Yutaka finally gives in. He explains that he first noticed her husky, low voice when she called their department about some expense reports. She had asked whether all the restaurant bills submitted were for client meetings, and Yutaka had confessed that they weren't. He had gone to those restaurants alone because they were trendy and he wanted inspiration for his work. Expecting his reimbursement to be denied, he was surprised when Mocha proved it. From that moment, he fell from her kindness and felt genuinely validated. He recalls another day in the elevator when he recognized her voice and overheard her talking about how much she liked Takuma, particularly his silky smooth hair. It crushed him, knowing how different he looked with his afro, a feature he'd been teased about since childhood and even rejected for. Yumiko tries to lift his spirits, telling him that Mocha might not be like everyone else and that he should at least talk to her. Yutaka refuses, saying he's fine just admiring her from afar. Yumiko empathizes with him, aware of her past self's own struggles with self-confidence, but insists that it's a waste not to try since his chances aren't zero. She adds that Mocha herself told her that afros are great. Hearing that, Yutaka's eyes widen with hope. He decides he'll try to talk to Mocha after all. Yumiko smiles, satisfied not only because she helped Yutaka, but also because she hopes Mocha will stop setting her sights on Kesuke. The next day, Mocha visits the planning department looking for Yutaka. When he finally shows up, he's wearing several pieces of jewelry and seems oddly confident. Mocha approaches him about a receipt he submitted to the accounting office, but Yutaka boasts that he went to a bar and became popular with the girls there, claiming it was all for research. Mocha narrows her eyes and points out that there's no date listed on the receipt. She scolds him for being careless, reminding him that her department can't afford such mistakes. With a disappointed look, she turns and walks out, leaving Yutaka deflated. Yutaka loses all motivation and, in frustration, starts cutting his own hair. Everyone rushes to stop him, but he refuses to listen until Yumiko cups his cheeks and gently tells him that he doesn't need to change. She reminds him that his hair is his charm point. She adds with a confident grin that her own charm point is her entire body. Her words strike a chord with him. Yutaka calms down and decides to try again. Before heading out of the office, he thanks Yumiko for encouraging him. He manages to catch up with Mocha just before she reaches her department and immediately apologizes. He admits that it was his fault for forgetting to write the date on the receipt and apologizes for acting brashly earlier. Nervously, he confesses that he's liked her since their very first phone call. To his surprise, Mocha smiles and asks if she can touch his hair. He bows slightly, letting her reach out, and she runs her fingers through its curls, saying it feels nice. She admits that she'd actually been curious about him. She explains that on the day of that call, she'd been feeling down, but when he mentioned a certain restaurant, it cheered her up. Because of that, she suggests that they visit the restaurant together someday. Yutaka's eyes well up with tears as he agrees, while his team secretly watches from a distance, trying to stifle their excitement. Their joy is cut short when Hiroki catches them spying. They immediately promise to get back to work. Later that night, Yumeko sits at home feeling genuinely happy for Yutaka. Inspired by his courage, she decides that she too shouldn't let pride hold her back and finally resolves to send an email to Keisuke. Yumeko decides to email Keisuke but realizes she has no idea what to write. She wonders if her old self had a similar situation and checks her email history, only to find exchanges with her family. She decides to compose the email on her own. After nearly an hour, she finally presses send, feeling proud of her effort. To her surprise, Keisuke replies almost immediately. His message thanks her for the souvenir. He mentions how busy he's been, but also includes an invitation to dinner. Yumeko's heart races as she realizes that he's practically asking her out on a date. Thrilled, she decides she needs new underwear and hurries out to buy some. The next day at work, the entire office is taken aback when Yumeko arrives wearing heavy makeup. She admits that she'll be going out with a man later that night. Concerned, Saki drags her to the bathroom to adjust her makeup. She explains that dark makeup smudges easily and that lighter shades would better complement Yumiko's pale complexion and delicate features. Yumeko suddenly mutters that she's a genius, and Saki, thinking she's being complimented, looks flattered, until it becomes clear Yumeko was talking about herself. As Yumeko gushes about her upcoming date, Saki asks if she and the man are already official. Yumeko admits it's their first time going out together. Saki advises her to take things slow. Saki gently warns her that rushing will make her look too easy. She explains that Yumeko should wait until she finds someone she's truly willing to give herself to completely, and that someone should feel the same way about her. Yumeko smiles warmly and thanks Saki for caring about her, then, without warning, proudly shows her the new underwear she bought for the date. Later that evening, Yumeko walks toward the meeting spot, spotting Keisuke from afar. Her face lights up and she rushes to him the moment their eyes meet. Keisuke looks especially handsome tonight and she can't help but feel a flutter in her chest. They greet each other warmly and Keisuke asks if she can call him by his name instead of using his title since tonight is part of their private life. In her excitement, Yumeko accidentally stutters while saying Keisuke's first name, which makes him laugh. Embarrassed, she realizes her mistake, but Keisuke smiles and asks if it's alright for him to call her by her first name as well. When he calls her Yumeko-chan, she feels her heart flutter. As they head into the restaurant, neither of them notices that they're being followed by Motoki and Shunzenburo. Shunzenburo sneezes loudly, apologizing and explaining that he must have caught a cold after spending the previous night spying on Yuki at his apartment. Motoki hisses for him to go home before he ruins their cover, but Shunzenburo insists he's fine. Inside, the two share a lighthearted conversation. They laugh about Yumeko's recent business trip that unexpectedly saved the company, and Keisuke's genuine laughter fills Yumeko with pride since she's glad she can make him smile so much. She then mentions that the trip was also meaningful because it gave her a chance to talk to Hiroki. Keisuke's eyes widen at the name, but Yumeko continues, saying that she used to feel uneasy around Hiroki, but now feels more comfortable. She even gathered the courage to ask him to be kinder to Keisuke. Keisuke thanks her for her kindness but admits that Hiroki has his reasons for being cold toward him. Yumeko hesitantly brings up the rumor surrounding Keisuke, saying she hopes it isn't true, but even if it is, she'll always think of him as a good friend. Just as Keisuke is about to say something, Shunzenburo suddenly sneezes hard enough to drop his glass and draw attention. Yumeko instantly recognizes the two men hiding nearby and calls them out. She wonders aloud if the two detectives might actually be on a date, which Motoki immediately denies. Keisuke, now curious, asks if she knows them. Motoki quickly takes control of the situation, introducing himself as a detective working on Yumeko's case. He then asks Keisuke if he knows anything about it. Yumeko steps in, insisting that he has nothing to do with her case. Motoki, however, replies coldly that he'll be the one to decide that. Wanting to prevent a scene, Keisuke calmly tells Motoki that he doesn't know anything about the case. He then excuses himself, giving Yumeko space to speak with the detectives since it seems they have business with her. Yumeko notices that Keisuke's demeanor has suddenly turned cold. She runs after him and apologizes for dragging him into her personal issues, but Keisuke gently assures her that none of it is her fault. He gives her a sad smile and tells her that no matter what happens, the two of them will always be friends. Relieved by his words, yet unsettled by his lonely expression, Yumeko wonders which version of Keisuke is the real one as she watches him walk away. Deciding to give up for the evening, she trudges back toward the restaurant, only to be met by Motoki, who teasingly asks if she just got dumped. Fuming, Yumeko nearly blurts out that she's mad at him because she spent a lot of money on new underwear for the date. Meanwhile, Keisuke glances back and sees Yumeko angrily confronting the detectives. He walks home, only to find Rikako waiting outside his apartment. The moment she sees him, she breaks down crying and throws herself into his chest. Inside, Keisuke gently reminds her that her father had instructed them to only meet in hotels, but Rikako says she's scared because memories of that day keep haunting her. Kisuke hands her a cup of coffee and tells her about the detectives investigating Yumeko's case. Makako immediately panics despite his reassurance that Yumeko still hasn't regained her memories. She begins worrying about her son, Yu. She confesses that she's no longer allowed to see him because her mother fears Yu might grow unstable. Calling herself a failure as both a wife and a mother, she pleads with Kisuke to visit Yu and tell him how sorry she is. Kisuke promises he will and tells her to rest. The next day, Saki eagerly asks Yumeko how her date went. Yumeko grumbles that her new underwear went to waste but brightens when she mentions that she and Kisuke have started calling each other by their first names. Saki smiles, happy to hear that things are moving forward, but Yumeko quickly grows uncertain again, saying she's not sure if it's real progress since Kisuke turned distant afterward. Saki assures her that mystery is part of the fun of romance and that there's no need to rush. She then suggests that Yumeko buy Kisuke a present. Yumeko likes the idea until Saki asks what his likes and dislikes are and she realizes she has no clue. Irritated, Saki points out that Yumeko barely knows anything about the man she likes. Later, Yumeko slumps at her desk, realizing how bad that sounds, but she quickly cheers up again, deciding she can simply learn more about him. She considers sending him a message, but decides that's too unromantic. Instead, she resolves to follow him discreetly. Trailing Kisuke, Yumeko observes that he's incredibly dedicated to his work, always focused and composed. She still can't figure out what his personal interests are, but the more she watches him, the more endearing she finds him. The weekend arrives, and Yumeko grows anxious since she still has no idea what gift to buy for Kisuke. Wandering around town in thought, she somehow ends up near the office. She spots Kisuke stepping out of the building dressed casually. She's about to call out to him when a boy's voice shouts his name first. To her surprise, Yu runs up to Kisuke and takes his hand, speaking to him with a surprising level of familiarity. Yumeko turns pale as she wonders if Yu could be Kisuke's son. She thinks kids these days call their parents by their first names. She overhears them talking about going to the theme park and decides to follow them from a distance. Unbeknownst to her, the detectives are also tailing Kisuke. They're startled to see Yu with him since there's no record of Kisuke ever having a child. At the theme park, Yumeko watches Kisuke and Yu enjoying themselves. She admits to herself that Yu is adorable and that the two of them really do look like father and son. Feeling a pang in her chest, she decides to head home. Just then, Kisuke's phone rings. He answers the call, unaware that Yu has wandered off toward a nearby stage. Trying to get a closer look, Yu accidentally bumps into a man, losing his grip on his balloon. Distressed, he chases after it as it floats away. On her way home, Yumeko hears the sound of a child crying. When she turns, she's shocked to see Yu sobbing nearby. She looks around but doesn't see Kisuke anywhere. Torn between helping him and worrying that Kisuke might think she's stalking him, she hesitates. But Yu's crying convinces her to help. Yumeko tells Yu not to cry, promising to help him find his dad. But Yu corrects her, saying he's with Kisuke, not his father. Relieved, Yumeko realizes Yu isn't Kisuke's son after all. She asks for his name and what's wrong. Yu points up to a tree and says the balloon Kisuke bought him got stuck in the branches. Yumeko admits it's too high for her to reach, which only makes him cry harder. Trying to comfort him, she says that his mom or dad can always buy him another one. Yu tells her that his mother is sick and his father got angry and left them. He adds that only Kisuke plays with him but looks sad. Now that his balloon is gone, Yu says he feels like everyone hates him. Yumeko suddenly gets a flash of her past. She sees her mother yelling at her younger self for being such a klutz. Not wanting Yu to feel the same loneliness, she pretends to talk to the balloon, telling Yu that it says it wants to go back to him. Then she begins to climb the tree, assuring Yu that none of the problems the adults around him are his fault. Halfway up, she slips and falls down. Undeterred, she tells him not to think of himself as a nuisance. She tries again, continuing to tell him that he's important to his parents and to Kisuke. This time, she manages to grab the balloon, but she loses her footing again and falls. She proudly returns the balloon to Yu, whose mood instantly brightens. Seeing his smile, Yumeko casually asks if he knows what Kisuke likes. Yu happily tells her about Kisuke's favorite food and favorite color, then adds that Kisuke also likes his mother. The revelation leaves Yumeko stunned. Yu then spots Kisuke searching frantically for him. He calls out and runs to him, and Kisuke hugs him in relief. Yu excitedly tells him that a kind and pretty lady helped him get his balloon back, but when he turns to point her out, Yumeko is already gone. Hiding behind a bush, Yumeko is heartbroken at the thought that Kisuke might already love someone else. She wanders aimlessly through town, lost in thought, until she notices people staring. She realizes that her pants have ripped. Before she can panic, Motoki suddenly appears and drapes his jacket around her waist. She quickly ties it on and accuses him of stalking her. Motoki calmly says it's part of his job and notes that she isn't with Kisuke. Yumeko says that she's going home, and Motoki ends up joining her in the taxi to retrieve his jacket. During the ride, he asks why she was following Kisuke. Yumeko defensively explains that she wasn't. She was just out shopping when she saw him with you. She says she only helped because you got separated and was crying, and adds that she learned Kisuke already likes someone. Motoki reveals that Yu is actually Hiroki and Rikako's son. Yu lives with Rikako's parents, and Kisuke has been visiting to take him out on occasion. Motoki believes Kisuke does it out of guilt over their separation, but Yumeko insists it's because Kisuke is kind-hearted. Motoki ignores her optimism, saying this only confirms that Kisuke and Rikako are lovers. Yumeko argues that it's too early to assume. Annoyed, Motoki tells her to just ask him directly. Yumeko says she intends to, and that if it turns out to be true, she'll give up on her feelings and remain his best friend instead. Motoki calls her a goody two-shoes, which Yumeko takes as a compliment. He adds that it seems she's acting like her usual self again. Yumeko wonders if he's teasing her on purpose, just to cheer her up. When they finally arrive at her home, her mother is startled by her disheveled appearance and surprised to see her bringing Motoki. Seeing how surprised Yumeko's mother is by his presence, Motoki introduces himself as a detective. Yumeko's mother immediately assumes her daughter got into trouble, but Yumeko quickly explains that she ripped her pants and that Motoki lent her his jacket to cover the tear. Relieved that it's just a minor issue, her mother tells Motoki he can head home if he wants. However, Motoki starts examining the house and asks if he can take a look around. Confused, she asks why, and he explains that Yumeko's supposed suicide case is now being investigated as a possible case of attempted murder. Yumeko suddenly realizes she forgot to update her mother about the change in the case. Her mother pales and tries to think of a way to get him to leave. She asks if he has a search warrant, but before Motoki can answer, the neighbors, who overheard the words "search warrant," begin gossiping. Not wanting to seem suspicious, she hastily invites Motoki into the house to make it look like he's just a guest. As Motoki starts snooping around, Yumeko accuses him of planning this from the start. Her mother then scolds her for being covered in grime and hurries her to change. Yumeko decides to obey, giving her mother the chance to quietly ask Motoki what he meant by attempted murder. Motoki explains that investigators found signs of a struggle, so there's a possibility someone tried to kill her. He then notices a large mirror in the living room. Yumeko's mother explains that it's a new purchase Yumeko made so she could see her entire figure. She admits she finds it strange because Yumeko used to hate mirrors and that she had even broken the ones above the sink before. Motoki finds the change in behavior peculiar. Yumeko's mother adds that Yumeko couldn't stand seeing herself back then and that she personally finds the mirror an eyesore. Yumeko's mother asks Motoki if he can let her know first if he discovers anything, fearing that the neighbors will start gossiping. Motoki finds her request irritating and decides to check Yumeko's room instead. At her door, he asks if he can enter, but Yumeko immediately resists, claiming that he's rude for wanting to enter a lady's room. When he goes in anyway, he's greeted by the sight of Yumeko frantically trying to hide her underwear. When things calm down, Motoki comments that the room looks rather plain for someone with Yumeko's energy. He had expected her to decorate it with more color and life. Yumeko admits that she wanted to, but also chose to keep a piece of her old self because that is still part of who she is. Motoki remarks that he senses something dark about her past self and that perhaps this room used to be her only safe haven. Yumeko is surprised by how observant he is about both her current and former self. Feeling more comfortable, she confides that she sometimes experiences sharp pains in her head accompanied by vivid images. In particular, she recalls seeing herself crying in front of a broken mirror, taking photos of Kisuke, and on one occasion she remembers seeing a knife and hearing someone scream. He grabs her shoulders and urgently asks if she remembers anything else, but Yumeko can't recall any further details. She admits that the memories frightened her at first, but Kisuke had reassured her that her current self would remain and that no matter what happens, they would still be friends. Now she's eager to teach her old self how bright and beautiful the world can be. Yumeko adds that when her memories return, she's confident she can prove that Kisuke isn't a criminal. Motoki decides to take his leave, but Yumeko's mother reminds him to inform her first about any new leads. Irritated, he asks what exactly she's worried about. To him, it seems she's more concerned about her reputation than about Yumeko's safety. Yumeko's mother hesitates, unsure how to respond, but Yumeko steps in to defend her. She insists that her mother is amazing since she gave birth to someone as amazing as her. Motoki can't help but laugh at the comment, which annoys Yumeko. Just as she's about to argue with him, he excuses himself. A few moments later, Yumeko runs after him, holding out his jacket. Motoki realizes he had forgotten it. When he puts it back on, he notices it's stretched and full of creases. As he tries to smooth the fabric, Yumeko thanks him for his help. To her surprise, Motoki apologizes for misjudging her. Yumeko narrows her eyes, suspecting another one of his tricks, and asks what exactly he's planning. Motoki explains that he had originally thought Yumeko was bluffing about her memory loss. But now he realizes that the emergence of her new personality and the loss of her memories were her mind's way of protecting itself. He warns her that facing her past might not be pleasant and asks if she's still willing to uncover her memories. Yumeko answers that she's ready for anything. Motoki decides to ask her something important, but before he can continue, Yumeko suddenly panics. She stammers that she can't do what he's asking because her heart already belongs to Kisuke. Motoki, clearly caught off guard, tries to clarify, but Yumeko refuses to listen, continuing to insist that her feelings are unshakable. Finally, he pinches her nose to shut her up. He tells her that what he wanted to ask was simply for her to accompany him to the crime scene. She agrees to go with him, and they decide to visit the location at 4 p.m. The next day, Motoki and Shunzaburo drive Yumeko to the site. On the way, Motoki points out that the place is quite far from both her home and workplace. Yumeko admits she has no idea why she would have gone there. They arrive at an old, abandoned hotel. As Yumeko stares at the building, a sudden sharp pain pierces her head. The detectives immediately check on her, but she insists she's fine and says they should proceed inside. They follow the hallways until their destination. Shunzaburo tells her that the police suspect Kisuke and Rikako may somehow be connected to her case. Motoki then announces that they've arrived at the scene. Yumeko faces forward and feels uneasy as she looks at the window, but she steps closer anyway. As she moves, Shunzaburo warns her to be careful of the skid marks. Yumeko mishears him and thinks he said squid. Shunzaburo clarifies that skid marks are footprints or drag marks. Motoki asks what her shoe size is. When she tells him, he points out that there are 3 distinct shoe prints in the area, hers, another woman's, and a man's. Shunzaburo also points at the edge, explaining that her fingerprints were found there, suggesting she tried to hold on. Motoki adds that if Yumeko had intended to commit suicide, she wouldn't have been grasping so desperately. As Yumeko stares at the spot, a flash of memory surfaces. She remembers holding on to the edge for dear life. A sharp pain shoots through her head. The detectives immediately move closer, trying to comfort her and see if she remembers anything else. Shunzaburo suggests ending the investigation for the day since she's clearly in pain, but Yumeko knows that if she stops now, she might lose her only chance to prove Kisuke's innocence. She grips Shunzaburo's hand and assures him that she can continue. Digging deep into her mind, she recalls seeing a woman. The woman was crying, but Yumeko couldn't make out the words she was saying. She tells them that she had been with the woman and that she had been denying something, but Yumeko couldn't convince her. Tears suddenly well up in her eyes. Motoki gently tells her that's enough for now, but Yumeko insists she can push a little further. Motoki refuses, his tone calm but firm, saying that forcing herself might do more harm than good. As they walk back toward the car, Yumeko spots a patch of Queen of the Night flowers blooming nearby. The sight makes her pause. Shunzaburo is surprised that she knows about flowers, but Yumeko admits she doesn't and that she just finds them oddly familiar. Then she says she must remember them because they're as beautiful as she is. Motoki tells them to hurry to the car. Yumeko lingers for a moment longer, the flowers scent tugging at something deep within her. That night, while doing her usual bedtime routine, Yumeko reflects on what she's learned. She wonders who the 2 other people at the scene might have been. One of them was clearly a man, but she's certain it wasn't Kisuke. She briefly considers Hiroki, remembering how she'd felt strangely nervous around him during her first day back at work, though they've since gotten along fine after their business trip. Then there's Rikako. She feels like she's seen her before, yet doubts they've ever met in person. Since the detectives mentioned the culprits were likely from her office, she dismisses the thought. Motoki once told her that her past self had no close friends or romantic relationships. Looking at herself in the mirror, Yumeko wonders if that was really true. With her current charm and confidence, she believes she must have been popular before. Yumeko tries to look for proof of her supposed popularity and pulls out her old yearbook. She flips through the pages, searching for her photo, but finds that she had drawn over it so heavily that her face is no longer visible. She checks the club and activity sections, hoping to find another photo somewhere, but there's no trace of her at all. Turning to the memory pages, she hopes someone might have written her a message, but it's blank. She closes the book and tells herself that maybe she was just too intimidating for anyone to approach. Feeling hungry, she decides to visit a convenience store. While browsing the shelves for a snack, someone suddenly calls out her name. She turns around to see Hashimoto. He asks if she remembers him since they went to the same middle school. Yumeko immediately asks if they were friends or if they dated, but Hashimoto quickly denies both. He says he only called out because he was shocked at how different she looks now. Yumeko takes it as a compliment, then eagerly asks if he remembers who her old friends were since she recently lost her memory. Hashimoto tells her that she was usually alone back in middle school. He apologizes for not being much help, but Yumeko beams with pride, convinced that her beauty must have been too intimidating even back then. Hashimoto starts to laugh at her conclusion. He admits that talking with her now is fun and refreshing. And if he had known this side of her before, he would have loved to be her friend back then. They part ways with a wave, and Yumiko walks home, wondering if she had any fond memories from school. Most of the ones she recalls are sad or frightening, and she quietly hopes there were happy ones too. An old woman suddenly calls out to her, and Yumiko looks up to see a friendly face. The granny asks if she's alright since she heard about her getting hurt. Yumiko is surprised that the old woman knows her, and the granny introduces herself as her next-door neighbor. Feeling embarrassed, Yumiko explains that she lost her memory. The granny sympathizes, but says that the change suits her since she's become so beautiful. She asks if Yumiko's going somewhere since she's dressed so nicely. Yumiko replies that she just went out for some snacks and that she always tries to look perfect no matter where she goes. The granny laughs, delighted, and says she's happy Yumiko still loves to eat. She reminisces about how Yumiko used to come over for the ohadi she made. But Yumiko's mother had eventually scolded her for making Yumiko gain weight, so Yumiko stopped visiting. As she grew older, she also stopped looking the neighbor's way. The granny says she always felt responsible and wanted to apologize to Yumiko's mother, but Yumiko gently takes her hands and thanks her. Even if she can't remember those moments, she's grateful for the happy memories they shared. The granny looks at her warmly and says that young Yumiko always had the cutest smile. Yumiko smiles, comforted to know that she did have good memories after all. They bid each other goodbye, and Yumiko walks home feeling confident that she's making progress. She's certain she's getting closer to uncovering the truth. As she strolls down the street, a small dog starts barking at her. Yumiko assumes the dog must recognize her, unaware that it's really after the snacks she's holding in her plastic bag. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every week.